Everyone, and a really warm welcome to this important community consultation session. We obviously would have loved to have had this session in person, but obviously the COVID-19 restrictions have not allowed that to occur. Could I just make a number of introductions at the outset? Firstly, I'm Lydia Wilson, Chair of the Panel of Administrators at the City of Whittlesea. And I'd also like to introduce my colleagues, Administrator Peter Duncan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
And Administrator Chris Eddy.
Good evening, everyone. Great to be here.
And I think the fact that the three administrators are in attendance this evening is testament to the importance of this particular session. Could I also introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Craig Lloyd.
Good evening, everyone.
Mr. Frank Joyce, who's the Executive Manager of Governance and Strategy, and you'll be hearing from him shortly.
Good evening.
And also Mr. Mark Montague, who is our Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, everyone.
I also just need to note that there's a number of other council officers in attendance this evening, including our Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Amy Montalti. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you for making the time and effort to come along this evening. We're obviously really keen to hear all of your views. In commencing the meeting, I'd like to recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place. And I'd also like to personally acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Tonight, as you would be only too well aware, we're here to talk about the proposed council plan for the next 4 years, the proposed long-term financial plan, and also the council budget. What we wanted to do this evening is show you a short presentation, and our officers will be presenting a number of slides for you. And then the most important part of the session is to hear from you, to hear your comments, any questions you might have, and obviously to hear your views. We'll be using a particular platform called Menti, and I just do need to note at the outset that it's the first time that we're using that platform, so fingers crossed that everything goes well and we don't have any technical glitches. But we'll show you how to get involved in that shortly. And there will be time at the end of the session for questions. I'm now just going to hand over to Frank Joyce to run through a few housekeeping items. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. I'm aware, as Administrator Wilson said there, we are using Menti and we're also using YouTube today to communicate with residents. So with the YouTube, if for some reason there are any technical issues from your end, we do encourage you to please log out and log back in with the link that you've been provided, and hopefully you can continue contributing. We did want you to be aware that when we are using Menti, there may be a slight delay from when a question is asked to when you receive it and you could submit. And also we take on board the fact that it may take you a little while to respond to those questions. So we will certainly give you plenty of time to answer and provide your input. It's really important that we capture your feedback today. So I'll start by just giving a bit of an overview about the proposed community plan. So the community plan is actually includes our council plan, which is required under the Act to really set the strategic direction for the next 4 years for council. It also incorporates our municipal public health plan, which is another 4-year plan which is required, our disability action plan, and our pandemic recovery plan. So it's a very comprehensive plan covering those 4 elements. Over February and March in 2021, Council asked those who lived and worked in the City of Whittlesea what was important to them. So we did this to ensure that our 4-year community plan was developed with the community's concerns and priorities at its heart. Our engagement was in many forms, including online and face-to-face events, a survey, multiple pop-up events at various locations, focus groups, and an online participatory budgeting workshop. In addition to the information we received through all these engagement opportunities, we also looked at our data, what the data was telling us. So we looked at health data, data from the consultation that occurred in late 2018 when we developed Whittlesea 2040, our core community and council vision, and also looked at other data that was available to us through the ABS, through census and demographic data to help us really understand our community, as well as taking on board all the feedback that we received while we went through that deliberative engagement and various forms of engagement over March and February earlier this year. So what we actually asked the community was, we had a couple of main questions that we asked over that period, which it was, what should council focus on over the next 4 to 10 years to make sure Whittlesea is a connected community with livable neighbourhoods, a vibrant economy and sustainable environment. So there's many means of ways people could submit responses to that, whether it's through surveys, postcards, direct conversation at focus groups, or through online media. We also asked, how should council's $2 million COVID-19 Community Recovery Fund be spent to best help our community recover from the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic? There were more than 1,300 people who joined the conversation with 5,530 comments, which gave council a really strong understanding of the community sentiment on these important issues. The results of this engagement have informed the community plan, including our COVID-19 recovery response and other important policy areas such as health and wellbeing, disability, ageing well, arts and culture, green wedge, climate change and social and affordable housing. As I mentioned, we did also consider other data that was available for us, including the annual household survey, the pandemic recovery surveys and ABS growth data to inform the plan. So what the community told us was, they gave us, there's very clear analysis done of all the feedback received from the community, and it came up with 10 priorities. And as you see them listed on the slide, so the first priority that came through was more parks and playgrounds. So really improving the maintenance of those we already have, as well as creating more for our growing areas. Roads as a priority was number 2, including safety, roadwork and maintenance. And support for local businesses, helping them grow with grants, incentives and marketing assistance was the third highest priority. Then fourth was biodiversity, including planting more trees, conserving habitats and looking after wildlife. And our fifth highest priority was improving waste management, especially promoting recycling and practical systems for hard rubbish and green waste. We also had priorities relating to local shops and local shopping precincts, public safety, community facilities and infrastructure, local employment and festival events, arts and markets. So there was a lot of work also looking at not only the data that was provided as a whole, but what was the data telling us by place. So we looked at it by
IT gremlins. Can I ask someone to take control of that screen if we can? I'll just keep moving on from where Frank was while he's hopefully rejoining us. So they were the top 5 priorities. The next top priorities were local shops, which is obviously a real key for us. I can't see the presentation now. The presentation's dropped down. But the other five priorities were displayed on the screen there, which were key themes that came up from the community, which were obviously really important. So the focus is on all 10 of those priorities. There's no particular order. All of them need covering. They're all equally as important. They came through in that ranked order, but all of them obviously need to be addressed equally. I'm just going to wait just a moment just to see if Frank is going to be able to rejoin us. If not, I'll just pause for a second and if we can put up the technical slide for a second, I'll just pull up the presentation. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry about that. We had a little technical glitch there, and I'll have to take over from Frank, who's obviously having some internet challenges. So the next slide that Frank was going to present was our goals and key directions. These are self-explanatory. I think they're on the screen here. So our goal 1 is our connected community, which is our socially cohesive community, a healthy and safe community, and a participating community. And all of these 5 goals here all together, as you can see in the diagram in the middle. The second one is our livable neighbourhoods, and that touches on the themes that we've already touched on around those vibrant communities, well-designed neighbourhoods, and one of the really important things that keeps coming up is around our transport network. Goal 3 is around the strong local economy, increased local employment, education opportunities for everybody, and successful innovative local business. Goal 4 is our sustainable environment, and that's all about valuing our natural landscapes and our biodiversity, and making sure that we're climate ready and obviously climate change ready, and being leaders in clean, sustainable living. And Goal 5 is a high-performing organisation. So this is about council itself, making sure that we're driving better community outcomes, that the council's decisions that the council makes are more informed, so the better use of data and evidence, and more cost-effective investment. So there are 18 initiatives in the plan for Goal 1, which is the connected communities. And as I said before, that includes things like improving public safety, particularly to make people feel safe, particularly when they're out and about at night, seems to be a bit of a theme of the plan. Working with our partners to lead the recovery from the pandemic, establishing an Aboriginal gathering place, and Council's already made some pretty significant steps with that project. Commencing the construction of a leisure and wellbeing facility in Mernda. I'm sure we'll get some questions on that one later. And advocacy for mental health services and programs. Goal 2 has 11 initiatives, including the implementation of the Quarry Hills Regional Park Master Plan. And for those that follow Council, you may well know that we're currently seeking feedback on the design of the Quarry Hills Regional Park. Advocating for new and upgraded roads and better public transport connections and public transport in general. Improving disability access to that public transport. and another pressure area for us as well, which is delivering more affordable and accessible homes in the municipality. Goal 3 has 10 initiatives. They include working with our partners to increase opportunities for local work, training, apprenticeships, and targeted employment programs. Continuing to work with our partners, the Our Plenty Library Service, to improve our library services and access to that service. Delivering the Support Local campaign, which is a campaign and incentives program to support the local community to be able to support our own local businesses. And implementing the Victorian Government's funded 3-year-old kinder program, which is very important for us given the growing population. Goal 4 is sustainable environment, and this includes 9 initiatives, including delivering key actions from the Rethinking Waste strategy. It was a strategy that Council endorsed just a few months ago, and it deals with everything waste. Delivering the Greening Whittlesea strategy, and that includes increasing our tree canopy and greening up the whole of the municipality. Introducing new recycled drop-off points, as well as a resource recovery shop. An analysis of extreme heat on the health and well-being of our community to inform the future planning of our built environment. Goal 5 is our high-performing organisation, 12 initiatives in this one. The first one is improving our customer services, so that's to make that easier for you to interact with Council. Continue to strengthen local community engagement to inform Council programs and decision making. So events like tonight, sharing information and listening to your ideas are all part of that and very important. Developing and implementing a new workforce plan, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on. That's all about attracting a really high quality workforce and retaining the really high quality workforce that we already have to make sure that we can deliver the best we can for our community. And the final one there is undertaking service planning, and that's to drive innovation, improvements, efficiencies, and service excellence, all about delivering on that customer experience and delivering what it is that our community needs moving forward. On that point, I'm going to hand over to Mark Montague, our Chief Financial Officer, who's going to talk to us about our financial position and the 10-year plan. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Craig, and good evening to everyone once again watching us virtually online. As Craig mentioned, I'm just going to give a brief overview of Council's 10-year financial plan, which is really the key strategic document that outlines how Council will financially resource those initiatives, services and programs that our community have told us they value the most over the next 4 years. And very much beyond that, looking at and making sure that Council's able to continue to deliver services and infrastructure investment into the future in a sustainable way that's going to enable Council to effectively provide those services and infrastructure needs for future generations also from that side of things. In terms of some of the key assumptions that have been built into and approaches towards financial sustainability over the next 10 years for Council, I'll work through a few of the key assumptions that we outlined there. First and foremost, a rate cap increase. That's forecasted to align with current CPI information. Council, going on 6 years now, has the local government sector in general subject to a state government imposed rate cap, which Council complies with on an annual basis, which very much aligns with CPI. So the assumption on that side of things is a 2% rate increase year on year over the next 10 years, which aligns with what CPI estimates or assumptions are from that side of things. Secondly, setting our waste charge at a sustainable level that adequately covers the cost of providing our service. So that's a really important one from that side of things. A number of years ago, Council introduced a separate waste charge that effectively is split out from rates from that side of things. And importantly, Council has been subsidising that service to a degree since its inception, and effectively that the financial plan seeks to make sure that Council can continue to deliver those services in a sustainable way into the future for the community. The third point I'll touch on, just identification of efficiency savings, the operating budget. So that's a key area from that side of things that certainly Council is committed to in looking for efficiencies in the way we deliver our services to the community from that side of things, to identify opportunities for savings that can be reinvested for further and future community benefit from that sense. Council's fees and charges. So Council, as we've heard, as working through the community plan, Council delivers a number of services, initiatives, etc. for the community. They come attached with various fees and charges from that side of things. So from that sense, The financial plan seeks to find an appropriate balance between fees and charges for certain services, as well as enabling or ensuring that they are able to be continually delivered from a financial sustainability point of view into the future. The identification of alternative revenue streams is a key one for council also, and particular external funding from that side of things. I'll talk on a subsequent slide about from a capital perspective, capital grant funding, and the advocacy associated with that for council. But that's crucial. So effectively any grants that council is successful in achieving from other levels of government, state or federal from that sense, relieves the burden that funding is placed on from a rates perspective. So that's a really important area for council, and really important for ensuring that council is able to continue to maximise benefit to the community in terms of what we've got available to invest. The last point there, continuing to monitor council's investment in asset renewal to ensure the appropriate balance between new infrastructure for growing areas and asset renewal for more established areas. So I'll talk to our capital program, 10-year capital program shortly, but that's a key point for council on that side of things, identifying what the appropriate mix is for investment in new infrastructure for growing sort of communities within our municipality, but also identifying the need to invest in the renewal of existing assets for the more established areas from that side of things as well. Thank you, Craig. The chart on the screen, the graph on the screen that we're looking at there really shows a breakdown of council's primary funding sources in terms of how council funds the services that we deliver to our community. Just a couple of things to highlight on this slide. Firstly, the proportion that council relies on rates and charges. So that's at 54%. So quite high from that side of things. And I'll highlight the fact there as well that City of Whittlesea does actually maintain one of the lowest average household rates across councils on Melbourne's fringe from that side of things. So that's an important fact from that sense. The other thing that I would just like to highlight is the 30% reliance there that council has on contributions, both monetary and non-monetary from that side of things. That's a really important point to understand. Contributions, particularly non-monetary, are non-cash, as we should say, that relate to assets that are really provided by developers, I should say. Sorry, apologies for that. Assets provided by developers to councils, like infrastructure, roads, etc. from that side of things. So very much non-monetary from that side of things. And on the monetary contribution side, that's more of a cash proportion from received from developers. The important fact to take into account there is none of those two items, so 30% of council's revenue, actually equates to cash that council is able to invest or at its discretion invest into different services, etc. They're very much focused on future infrastructure investment. So the point to highlight there is when we're looking through the financial plan and see the revenue numbers and the surplus numbers in particular, it's important to bear in mind that large portions of that surplus are actually made up by amounts that don't contribute to available cash for council to invest in service delivery or at this council's discretion in terms of how they invest. Thanks, Craig. Just want to briefly highlight council's capital works program. So capital works program is on the screen there on a 10-year basis. It's average investment of 88 million. Which I think reflects the growth going into the municipality, particularly over the next 10 years from that side of things. And as I previously mentioned, that will be a split between investment in new infrastructure for our growing and developing areas, and also the renewal and upgrade of existing council assets in those more established areas or pockets of the municipality from that side of things. I touched on advocacy and the fact of that we'll continue to advocate to both state and federal levels of government on behalf of our community for funding on key projects, which is integral to the ongoing development over the next decade. And as I mentioned, very much relieves that burden on rates dollars from that sense as well. And just to finish off, I just want to touch base and provide a bit further context in relation to our waste charge. I have touched on it, but City of Whittlesea currently has one of the lowest waste charges in the state. And as I mentioned, it's heavily subsidised. So the subsidisation for the community in the 2021-22 budget was in the order of 2.3 million. And that was in the face of some significant costs that council have had to incur, 60% increase in the landfill levy in particular. That's really increasing the cost of delivering or providing those services to our community versus the rate effectively being recovered or charged. So the important thing from that side of things is that's on an ongoing basis, not seen as being financially sustainable. So the assumption in that 10-year financial plan is council will increase its base charge by 12% over the first 5 years of the financial plan. And that's very much to bring effectively the charges to residents back in line with the cost of providing the service. And then that's expected to drop to around about 5% over the following 5 years, which will be full recovery of the cost to provide the service for that sense. And that's something that's needed very much from a financial sustainability perspective for council. And the important point from that side of things is just, sorry if you bear with me for a second, I can't see, that's okay. That equates to, I believe, it's about $14 additional per household from that side of things. So $14 increase expected year on year for the first 5 years. That'll enable a significant investment or more investment into council services and delivery of critical infrastructure and programs, etc. from that side of things. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Mark. So now we're moving on to the most important part of tonight, which is answering your questions and getting your feedback. What you'll see on the screen here is the address for Menti. So if you've got a QR code reader, which most people seem to need now for checking into places, you can scan that or simply just use your web browser to go to menti.com. When you get in there, it'll ask you on the front page for a code, and that's the 11980431 number, and that will come up on the next slides as well. I'll leave that there just for a moment. What I'm going to do in just a second is pull this slide down, and we'll bring up Menti on the screen, and we can start working through some questions. We're going to start off with some questions that have been submitted prior to tonight, and that will give you time to enter your questions in. So the plan, if we can, is to have you put questions in and comments in as we work through this. We'll start off focusing purely on the council plan and the 10-year plan, and there will be an opportunity at the end to ask any other general council questions that you would like to ask. So I'm just going to stop sharing this for a moment, and I'll just pull up the Menti slide. Okay. Okay, so everyone should slide, and I've just opened the voting there. So using Menti on your device or your screen, what do you love about our community? What are the things that mean a lot to you about the city of Whittlesea, wherever you live, and what are the things that are really important to you? The way this word art works is the bigger a word appears on the screen means the more people have said the same thing, and all of the information that you're typing in tonight is all captured and we'll download at the end, and we'll be using all of these information and questions to build the final version of the community plan and the 10-year plan as well, the 10-year financial plan. So we've seen environment coming up quite a bit here, and that's completely consistent with what we heard in the early work around the community plan, particularly around parks, tree canopies, the environment and green places. That came up a lot. The great people, I have to agree, it's an amazing, absolutely amazing community, and they're very diverse and varied group of people in the municipality, and I think that's really what makes it what it is. Westfield, yeah, we've got a Westfield, more than one Westfield, that's great as well. Someone's put not a lot. That's a little disappointing, but we'll get on to the questions in a minute and we can find out why that is and what we need to do to make this a nice place for you to live. Multicultural shops and the diversity coming up a lot there. Neighbours, back on the theme of people. Lots of things, public art, shopping facilities. Question or a comment there about it's not inclusive. Again, we'll capture in a minute your thinking behind that and what we need to do to address that. So keep typing those in. We'll give it just a minute or so for people to put them in, and I'll give you a 30-second countdown before we run out of time turning that off. So just pull out some of the other ones we've got here. Lots of environment ones, which is very consistent across all of these. The depth of the culture, the river red gums. Yeah, there's some absolutely stunning river red gums, and the work that council and the community did in the past to protect those river red gums so that they're there for us now is a really important piece. Walking tracks, bike paths, not inclusive for singles. Again, we'll pick up in a minute and find out a little bit more about that. I'm just going to pop a 30-second timer on the screen there, just before we move on to the next slide. So keep putting those in, we'll keep capturing them. There's quite a few things about the community feel. Has
Did
a
you
museum.
note public art, Craig?
I did notice public art. It's one of your favourites there, Chair. There's quite a few. We're almost at the end of that particular timing, so we'll just wrap that one up. There we go. So we'll capture all of those, and all of those will be downloaded. If you're still typing them in, they will keep appearing. We'll move to the next slide now. So keeping this in mind, this is the slide that Frank was sharing with us at the beginning, the 10 priorities, the top 10 priorities. Obviously there are more, but these are the top 10 priorities that the community talked about during the early consultation and in building the proposed community plan. And lots of those things you've already mentioned are obviously referenced in here. So keep this in mind as we move on to the next question. So the community plan reflects what is important for our entire community. On your screen, you will have an opportunity there to slide that slider to the left or to the right of whether you agree that the plan has got it about right. And it will move around as people do that. And as you'll see, the number keeps moving around on the screen. There'll be an opportunity in a minute to tell us what's missing. And that's a really important bit because we want to make sure that everyone's ideas and views are captured. So if there's things that are missing for you, things that you'd like to see in the plan, you will get the chance to put those in a minute. So we're sitting at 3.4 at the moment. That's good. I'll give it plenty of time for people to put the scores in. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner as people are voting as well. So it gives us a bit of an idea of how people are going putting those through. There's just a couple more of these questions on the background, and then we'll get into answering some of the questions that have been raised and opening it up for you to ask any new questions that have popped into your heads tonight or that mean a lot to you. All right, I'll put a 30-second counter on that one just to give people a chance to get their numbers in. They're still coming in. So we're sitting at 3.2 at the moment, which is good. And as I said, you'll get a chance to comment on what is missing in a sec. All right, last 5 seconds or so. There we go. So we finished off at 3.3, and I'll move on to the next slide now. So what do you feel is missing? Is there anything important that's missing that you can't see in the plan or needs to be strengthened in the plan? As you type these in, as you see, they'll pop up on the screen here and they'll scroll through as we do that. So I'm just going to open the voting there. There we go. So to support the arts sector, which has been heavily impacted by COVID, would Council consider adding live music events to its calendar, but no country music? No one really likes that stuff. Yeah, nice comment. Some of you might know I'm a huge country music fan. But yes, and we already are looking at some live events. In the meantime, we're looking at some live online music and arts events to get us through until we can have live events, but we're certainly looking at quite a busy events calendar next year. Improving the cycling paths into the CBD, we'll pick up. Shops in East Wollert. I think we've got some questions about that, like one later on. I think some of that is a timing issue with the development of the developments up in East Wollert, so we'll come on to that as well. Public transport in Salt Lake Boulevard. You say that you want better use of data collected by council, however, nowhere in your plans going forward are any activities or services for the 38% of singles and couples with no children in Whittlesea. I'll address that one in a minute. But I respectfully disagree with you. There's a lot of money, time and effort going into things that will benefit everyone, including waste management, parks and gardens, road upgrades, all core infrastructure, community facilities. So I think there is there's a lot for everyone in this plan, and happy to focus in on some of the specifics of that when we get to that. Lots of comments about public transport, cycling paths, proper walking trails around Whittlesea. There's certainly a proposal which is in the plan around a walking or a multi-use track running from Whittlesea Township through to Mernda and connecting up with other paths there. So that's in the plan, but happy to have a look at those too. Anything on dog parks? Yes, there's more dog parks coming, and I'll happy to talk a little bit about that later on. We've got some already being built. I think we had one open, a new one 2 weeks ago, and another one which is under construction, which started this week. So there's lots of dog parks coming along. Nothing for childless, child-free and singles in your plan other than unused kids parks, libraries. Okay, so I think I've covered that one off already. I honestly disagree with that one, but we will cover some of those off as we get into the specific questions in a minute. More multicultural events. Yep, certainly, as I said before, looking at a whole range of community events for all of our community next year, once we can get out and about and doing what we can in the meantime, obviously online. Your references to arts and culture do not include cultural heritage. That one's dropped off. We're doing a lot of work in that cultural heritage space. It's not specifically called out as far as I can remember, but there is definitely work going on in that space. Maybe we can strengthen that up in the plan. As I said, we're capturing all of these, so keep putting them in, and we'll use these to strengthen up the document and make it very clear where things are planned that might not be as explicit in the plan, or put some things in that we've missed. And that's one of the bits of information I think we're all keen to be upfront about. This is why we're asking the question. We've asked lots of people, our staff, the community. Lots of people took part in this. I think we had more than 5,000 bits of feedback. But there's bound to be things that we've missed, and this is that opportunity to put that in. Libraries, we're certainly looking to expand the library service, looking at different models for that as well, and moving it into areas that don't have libraries, and expanding the libraries in the growth areas that need greater access as well as we're spending quite a lot of time and money at the moment refurbishing the existing libraries. Not enough public lights. Yeah, that fits in very much with the public safety theme. We had quite a lot of feedback on lighting, and I am aware that there are some issues in a couple of the new developments where there might be insufficient lighting, but also lighting is quite poor in a number of the existing older areas of the municipality too. So we've actually increased the budget on public lighting this year, and we're currently working up a plan of what that needs to look like for the next few years.
Craig, could I just also
Yes,
note that
definitely.
there's a real theme too there about arts and cultural heritage, and music obviously fits into that as well.
Yeah, there is. That's coming up quite a lot. And I was looking before when there was a particular comment came up about cultural heritage, and just as I started to read it, it disappeared. I'm going to try and pause it next time around. Where is the plan for cultural infrastructure? So at the moment, there isn't a specific separate plan for cultural infrastructure, but that isn't to say that we can't add that in, or certainly look at that during the life of the plan. So I think that's a really good point, and it is an area of weakness for us, I think.
And there's a comment about an art gallery as well, I note.
Yeah. There's one about cleaning up parks and enforcement on offenders, a lot of trash and dumping. Absolutely. That was one of the biggest themes coming through in the feedback, was the illegal dumping. We're doing a lot of work at the moment with the EPA and other agencies trying to deal with that. But there's a lot of things that council itself needs to do. We don't have enough parks, recycling bins, recycling bins in particular in our parks. We've got barbecues that don't have bins and recycling facilities near them, for example. So again, we've upped the budget to start breaking the back of that issue this year, but we're working on a plan for how we really get better, cleaner, safer parks as well over the next few years. I'm just going to put a 30-second timer on this one. Mental well-being, that's another key theme, of course. It's an area that I think we will have a look at how we might strengthen the plan in that area, because it's come up a lot. Obviously, COVID and that situation has exacerbated that particular situation even more. But it is a key advocacy platform of council for better mental health and mental wellbeing facilities in and around our municipality too. So that's certainly something we're keen to work with other agencies on as well. Okay, all right, so we'll move on from that one. As I say, all these get captured. And thank you for putting all of those in. So we're going to move on to questions now. We've got a couple of questions that were asked in advance, and I'll address those ones first, and that will give people a chance to put other questions in. So a question from Tony: how confident are you that with a predicted 40% increase in population by 2040, that council can maintain the minimal staff level increases projected of only 10% over 10 years? Won't we need more staff? That's a really good question, and we're doing a lot of work at the moment. The new Local Government Act requires us to have a new workforce plan, so that is being developed. But there's a couple of things at play here. Not all of the staff, of course, that work for council in our parks and gardens, in waste, are all actually employees. Some of those services are delivered by contractors, and we have allowed for that incremental growth in the financial plan. We are trying to be financially responsible with the growth of staff. We will know a little bit more about that when we finish the plan, and the 10-year financial plan is an evolving document. But we're also certain that we can drive some efficiencies within the organisation too. So we don't need to necessarily, as an organisation, grow at exactly the same rate as the population. If we can drive efficiencies through the use of technologies, reducing red tape and bureaucracy, we're confident that we'll be able to scale up our services without an enormous need for lots and lots of additional staff. The next question is from Jaita. When will public transport, specifically buses, near the Al Surat College and adjoining Salt Lake Boulevard be available? It was promised when land was purchased in 2016. I was hoping to be operative by 2018. Look, buses and public transport, of course, is the responsibility of the state government. That said, council's working very closely with the Department of Transport and Public Transport Victoria to really push for those services to come online quickly. We know there's a need. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, this is a real key advocacy platform of council as we head in towards the state election, which isn't too far away now. And there was a real focus. Infrastructure Victoria recently, last month or so, released a report looking at all the infrastructure requirements across the state, and buses were a real key theme of that. And Whittlesea, City of Whittlesea in particular, was highlighted in there for the need for urgent new services. So we'll be pushing the government for those to be introduced as quickly as we can.
Craig, could I just add that from an administrative perspective, both public transport and road-based transport is a real key strategic priority for our advocacy efforts, both at a federal and at a state level. And as Craig indicated, we're just finalising that advocacy platform at the moment.
Absolutely, thanks, Chair. I'd be interested to know the next 5-year plan around Craigieburn East Road, primarily the communities around Rathdown, Amber and Paramount Estate. So yeah, that is a rapidly growing area, and that area is due to be completed in terms of the residential development through there within the next 5 years or so. There is a state government primary school that's now been planned within the Amber section. And there's also active open space precincts which have been planned within the Stonefields estate, which is right next door, as you know, if you live up that way, to the Aramot estate. And also the Rathdown Neighbourhood Activity Centre, which will also include a supermarket, is likely to be delivered within the next 5 years. So we're working with the developers and other parties there to make sure that the plans that they have are fast-tracked to get that other core infrastructure in place as quickly as we can. Obviously, it takes time when there's a development for those other services and infrastructure to come in. And we're also working with the state government on improved connectivity of roads into that area as well, and upgrading of roads. But I hope that addresses your question. So at that point, I'm just going to open it up for other questions. So feel free to use Menti here. If you go back to Menti, just type in your questions. They'll come up on the screen one at a time, and I'll try and address them. I might have to take, if they're very specific, and please don't identify yourself with personal details, obviously okay with your name. Yeah, please don't identify yourself, but put the questions in and we'll answer as many as we can. If I can't answer them, I'll hand over to others that may be able to. So this is a core interest for us. How do we partner with you? A question from Danny. Lots of opportunities to do that. And I know, because Danny also submitted a prior question, that Danny has a particular interest in local community transport. Absolutely lots of opportunities to partner with us on that, Danny, and we'll make sure that one of our transport planners is in touch with you shortly to have a conversation about that and how we can get you involved. Will dog parks near Laylaw be prioritised as the current, as per the current off-leash area and the policy and the plan? Absolutely. So we have quite a plan for dog parks, and in that area alone, we're currently upgrading this financial year the Whittlesea Public Gardens in Laylaw. Fantastic project that's going to be. And the upgrade is going to include a contemporary dog park design. Modern dog parks these days also have a quiet dog zone within them to separate off the different dog types, and lots of upgrades including shelters and other things there as well. We're also planning, subject to approval of the budget next year, for a new dog park up in that area at the VR Michael Reserve as well in Laylaw. So those plans are progressing. Hopefully that answers your question. What is the plan for shopping centres and public transport in East Wollert? So lots of work has gone on there identifying the requirements. So in terms of public transport needs, we've undertaken recently a study into what is required, and that's it's been a really major piece of work that will inform our planning and our advocacy. We're working with the state government strongly to fast track some of that those core infrastructure plans, particularly the roads issues for Wollert. And again, that will form part of our advocacy ahead of the state election. In terms of shopping centres, look, we're working with the developers up in that area. It's very much they will happen as the community builds big enough to sustain shopping centres, but certainly developers are keen to do that. But it's a timing issue for them. What is planned for seniors living within the city of Whittlesea? Another good question. So we spend about $11 million a year on supporting our seniors, and that's everything from social support, aged care support, with our amazing staff that are out there every day of the year supporting residents to stay in their homes when they're senior rather than going into residential aged care. We have a new social support facility in Mernda. That one's currently being built and will be in operation late 2022. Building work starts very shortly. We're doing a lot of work at the moment to help and guide people through the Commonwealth's aged care system. It's an incredibly complicated system, as those that have interacted with it know. So we're putting a lot of effort in to help guide our community through that. We've been running digital literacy programs. It's become really important, particularly during the COVID situation, as more forums such as this move online. And it's been really important that we support our seniors to be able to use the basics of digital systems, to be able to interact with things like Medicare and other core systems as well. So that program's been very successful. We're enhancing, and this plan will also take us further with that. We're going to be enhancing programs to address the issues of social isolation and loneliness. It's a real issue in our community, and we got quite a bit of feedback on that through the consultation for the community plan. And we're also hoping that we get some seniors taking part in our new community leadership program, which we'll be launching hopefully in November this year. Chair, is there anything that you wanted to say about that community leadership program?
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. All I just wanted to add is, apart from the services that Council either directly provides or supports, it's also about the support that we provide to other agencies and organisations who provide that support for seniors. And a good example of that is the University of the Third Age, that play an absolutely critical role within our community. Thanks.
Thank you. A lot of money seems to be going to playgrounds. What facilities are planned for adults? So as a percentage, playgrounds are not overrepresented in the plan. There is a lot to do. We have 224, I think it is, playgrounds across the municipality. They range from very small ones to modern, all-inclusive, all-access playgrounds like the new one in Mill Park. But look, the budget covers an awful lot of things that are not directly related to children. We're including community centres in Mernda, Donnybrook and Wollert, a new library in Epping North. Park investment is much more than just playgrounds. Again, during the lockdowns and COVID situation, people seem to have rediscovered parks and playgrounds, and people are using parks for all sorts of activities, just getting fresh air or exercise, or the gym equipment that's in a lot of parks as well. So there's a lot there for adults. Council is working towards the establishment of an Aboriginal gathering place, which will be an all-inclusive place for all of our community to use and learn about the Indigenous community, but also to be able to access those facilities as well. And obviously there's all the core things that the council delivers. There's waste, recycling, roads, infrastructure, community events, seniors services, the list goes on. So it is a very
Neighbourhood houses and community centres too are really key.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lydia. Keen to know about the Wellbeing Centre and the Mernda Community Hospital. Yes, so let me just see what I know about that. So the Wellbeing Centre, if we're talking there about well, there's two things. We've got the new community hospital, the Mernda Community Hospital. Is actually going to be called, at this stage, it's called the City of Whittlesea Community Hospital, which the government, state government announced recently. They're in the process of acquiring that land in Mernda. That's going to be a really important community facility that will serve the whole of the municipality and a bit beyond. And that's in partnership, I understand, with DPV Health and some other health agencies as well. And Council's been advocating for that community hospital for a long time. So it will include mental health services and a broad range of local services. So we're really excited about that announcement. And hopefully that building gets going pretty quickly. What the final name will be, I'm not sure. It's certainly going to be in Mernda, but at this stage, the working name is the City of Whittlesea Community Hospital. Question from Dirk: how do you justify increasing wages and salaries for council staff and councillors? So council staff, look, to be able to attract the best people that we can to deliver the best services we can, we do need to keep pace with the industry. But beyond that, we also deserve, our staff deserve a living wage, and they all work very hard, as everyone in our community does. It's really important that their pay keeps pace, at least with CPI. So we're not the sort of council that has huge wages, and we certainly won't be looking at huge wage increases. That's not what this is about. And I think if you link this back to the earlier question about the growth of staff numbers, we're being very financially responsible there. In terms of councillors, obviously at the moment we have administrators, but once councillors return, council will, and the organisation will no longer have a say in the remuneration of councillors. So under the new Local Government Act, there's a tribunal established by the state government which will determine the remuneration for councillors, and then we'll be just directed that is the salary that we need to pay, or the remuneration that we need to pay those councillors. As the financial indicators are projecting underlying services, high working capital, low indebtedness and a cash balance at the end of the period of 110 million, would council consider a 0% rate increase? Look, really good question. It's always very difficult to explain surpluses. Yes, we do have a surplus, but the surplus doesn't really reflect the reality in a growth council. A lot of that money is assets that are transferred across the council. What I might do at this point is hand over to Mark Montague, our CFO. Mark, are you able to address this question?
Thanks, Craig. So in terms of the reported cash balance, large portions of that are actually restricted for future use in terms of investment in future infrastructure that have come through development contributions from that side of things. In terms of our underlying surplus from that sense, and working capital, again, I think from that sense, our cash results, so council's cash result is a much better indicator of what is available to effectively invest back into services, etc. from that sense. And as you'll note across the the 10-year financial plan, I think that's more in the order of about 12 million from that sense, indicating that council is investing effectively pretty much everything that is available resource-wise back into service delivery, infrastructure, etc. from that side of things. And also the awareness, I think, that the numbers reported in terms of surpluses and the cash figures and working capital ratios do include that component of restricted cash that needs to be used to fund future infrastructure from that side of things. So not at council's discretion at how that is actually spent.
Thanks, Mark. All right, we'll keep going. You mentioned that there would be more information on dog parks. I think I've already covered that one off. So we will be putting together an updated plan in the next, I think the next 6 months. There'll be an updated plan for dog parks of the rollout. We've been delivering them pretty rapidly and left, right and centre. We need to take stock of that and have another look at where they all need to be. But there's certainly budgeted and planned for in that in the council plan a significant increase in dog parks. We know how popular they are, particularly in the more dense residential areas. So it's that's again something we're really focused on. And parks, as we said earlier on, was the #1 issue that came up during the community consultation. What's your plan for Donnybrook as it's rapidly growing? So Donnybrook has an overlay and plans that were put in place before it was developed. Obviously, for a council that's growing as quickly as we are, and Donnybrook in particular has huge planned growth, it's really important that we keep up with the infrastructure. So council is doing what it can to make sure that we keep up with the development of our infrastructure, community facilities and the like. Developers in that area are also required to provide, as part of the approval process, they were required to provide a whole load of community infrastructure, and we're keeping very close tabs on that, and the developers are actually doing a really good job of doing that work. The other key part of that, of course, is the advocacy to the state government around all the other services that are required, such as emergency services, core infrastructure, roads and those things. So Donnybrook is one of those areas that has a very developed plan specifically about that growth. So without going into too much detail, hopefully that's addressed some of your answers there. When will the Mernda pool open? I can't give you a date for that one, but what I can tell you is that we've just finished the work. We've had experts working with us on what the facility would look like, working through things like the length of the pool, just revalidating some of the decisions and things that we need to do around some of the hardball facilities there, the basketball, netball courts, some of those things as well. The report on that will be going to council within the next 2 months, and then we're aiming to present the final business case to council early in the new year. Now, obviously, that is a very large facility. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's not something that's within the financial ability for council to fund on its own. So one of the most important parts of this work then will be advocating with our state and federal government to seek their funding to partner with council on that build. So I can't give you a date yet, but what I can say is that project is now moving quickly, and there'll be a lot of public information around that very shortly as it arrives at council. Keen to know about developments planned near Donnybrook Road area near the Peppercorn Hill estate. I can't answer that one specifically. I'm not aware of the details of that one, but I'm more than happy to provide some information afterwards. Please go into detail about the services you feel benefit the 38% of singles and child-free that do not benefit kids. I think I've covered that one off in an earlier question. There's a lot of services, and yes, there's quite a lot in the budget for young people and for children. There's a lot in there for our seniors, but there's an awful lot in the 10-year plan and in the financial plan and in the 4-year plan that benefits everyone in our community. So yeah, I think I've covered that one off already. Are you looking at any volunteer initiatives to help clean up parks? Would be keen to contribute to our great community. Absolutely, that's a fantastic idea. And we know that we've got a lot of volunteers in our community that put their hands up on things like tree planting days and Clean Up Australia days. But there's certainly more we can do in that space. There is a core responsibility of council too to maintain our parks and gardens. But obviously volunteer help with that, it makes a huge difference. So we'll certainly have a look at that, and we'll include that into the feedback on this plan and see what we might be able to do there. And it's a great way to get involved in your community too, which I think is the point you're making, which is really good. Will the Quarry Hill development have rubbish bins? Absolutely it will. We're working on a policy at the moment, which I've no doubt will result in more rubbish bins, more recycling in all of our parks and gardens that require them. We're also looking at how we might be able to, over time, in places that have barbecues, for example, we may well be able to include food organics collections in those places, but there's a fair bit of work to do on that. But absolutely, that development will have bins. What's planned for the shopping centres in East Willert? Are there any at the moment? Look, my understanding is that there are plans. How progressed they are, I'm not sure, and I'll probably have to take that one on notice. I know that in Willert and that general area, there are plans for shopping centres that are part of the overall precinct plans. Where they're at, though, I can't answer that at the moment. I'll have to come back to you on that one. Are there any public or private hospitals in plan further north from Epping? Not at this stage. Obviously, there is a new private hospital built or being built in New Epping, as the area is being known, right near the new housing development up there, but not that I'm aware of further north than that. Obviously, one of the things that the council is constantly advocating for, the state government in particular, is access to health facilities, and the Northern Hospital do a fantastic job for us. But where there's a need for more hospitals, obviously we'll keep advocating for those. Will there be more forums like this in the future? It's very convenient to be at home and still involved. Look, I hope so. I've certainly run some forums like this in the past online, and people always seem to enjoy them, and particularly during the winter months. In normal times, people prefer doing this, and they do sit in a hall somewhere. So I think for us, it's probably a mixture of the two. Lydia, is probably a way forward for us in the future.
I was going to hope I could come in on that as well, Craig. We're looking at a whole range of different opportunities by which we can engage with our residents and businesses. And obviously these sort of forums have really stood us in good stead through the pandemic. And we've actually run a number of community consultation sessions regarding specific issues at a local level. And again, they've worked very well online. So from our perspective as administrators, we're really keen to see how we can further promote such sessions, not just on the community plan, but on a multiplicity of different issues. The Pandemic Recovery Fund was a great example, where it was co-designed by the community, and essentially everything was done online.
Yeah, that's right, Lydia. And we're looking at a very similar forum that's part of the consultation around the Quarry Hills Parks development as well, using similar kind of approach to this. So I think you're right. The mixture is really the way forward, I think. Very keen to assist and have a say in development for the local mental health services. How can I partner? A question from Harry. Lots of opportunities to partner on that. If you reach out to council, just shoot us an email. We probably may already have your contact details, I'm not sure, but shoot us an email and just mark it for my attention, and I'll make sure that we have one of our managers make contact with you about how you can get involved in that kind offer. Thank you, Harry. Will the rise in waste charges allow for the council to put more bins in parks and improve green spaces? Happy to pay more for this. Possibly. The rules around waste charges are very strict, and we've got to do some work around what that looks like. But regardless, I personally think there's obviously cost in putting bins in parks, but there's an even bigger cost to the environment and a bigger cost when we have to go around litter picking everything. So that's one of the things we've got to work through. So I'm not sure that one specifically will increase the waste charge, but certainly something that we need to do. Can we keep the excellent current administrators as long as possible and not go back to dysfunctional councillors cohort?
Craig, perhaps I might just only to make a comment that I think that might be a little bit tongue in cheek But we feel very privileged, very, very privileged to be administrators for the City of Whittlesea. And we've obviously got a fixed term, which is through to October 2024. But we will be doing everything we can from essentially November onwards to roll out our leadership program and make sure that we leave a lasting legacy in every way, whether it's good governance, but also we've got a very clear roadmap through to 2024. So that would be my only comment, but thank you.
Yeah, look, in addition to that, Lydia, obviously a lot of the people that have joined us tonight have got lots of good ideas and want to be involved in making a difference for their community. So putting their hand up for some of those leadership programs and considering joining as a councillor next time round is always an option for people as well. The planned Mernda Leisure Facility, what will it offer? A little bit early to go into detail on that, but certainly the early designs included a pool and the highball courts, so lots of netball courts, basketball courts and the like, which we do have a shortage of. So that's all part of the plan at the moment. There might be some opportunities for some other facilities there, and that's part of the work that we'll be doing with the business case over the next few months. Our business following recycling and food waste protocol. Look, it's an area that certainly needs improvement, and part of our rethinking waste plan is to engage better with business to help them look at opportunities to recycle their products, also to avoid waste in the first place, which is the most important part of that cycle of waste. And we do need to look at food waste and how we might be able to expand our current food organics program, the green bins, how we might be able to expand those out to cover most of the businesses in the municipality, particularly businesses, restaurants, cafes and the like. So I think there's definitely opportunities there, and that is covered within that rethinking waste plan. No offence intended, but it feels as if arts, culture and cultural heritage doesn't appear to be recognised as a core of community development, and cultural tourism. Is an integrated plan possible? Yeah, look, absolutely. Arts and culture and cultural heritage did come through as a theme, particularly, I have to say, referenced as events more than anything else. But certainly in the commentary from people, the arts and culture was highly commented on. That's an area that we might look at as part of the draft. As we finalise the community plan, we might look to strengthen up that area. And we're certainly going to be developing an arts and culture plan. What the timing of that is, I'm not entirely sure yet, but it certainly will be in the short term. Lydia, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I only just wanted to say that it is also a priority that the administrators have recognised. And there was a comment that I noted earlier on in relation to not having a gallery within the municipality. I think there's a whole range of issues in relation to arts, cultural development and heritage. And we recognise that is a priority, and I think it's a good point just as to whether we need to strengthen anything within this draft community plan.
Yeah, I agree. We are running over time, but I am just going to keep churning through the questions as people have taken the effort to put them in. So if it's getting late for you, do feel free to wrap up for the night, but otherwise we'll just keep going through the questions. The reception staff, general inquiries staff who answer our phone calls at the council office are very polite, helpful and very professional. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Kerry. I'll certainly pass that on. We're investing a lot into our customer services at the moment. That's not just the staff. Staff are fantastic, as you've mentioned, but we need to refresh our IT systems. We're looking at a lot more online systems so that people can self-serve. We're very proud recently to have become the first council in the state that's gone live with a new planning system that allows people that put in planning applications, mums and dads putting in planning applications, to lodge them very simply online, to interact with the planner that's assessing them, get updates all the way through, and get text messages and emails as the process moves along. So we're looking at similar systems to that across all of our core services. So, but I'll definitely pass that on, Kerry. Thank you. Is there anything that can be done about the hordes of maskless people around Epping Plaza? Can the council provide any COVID-safe officers to help with enforcement and education? This is a real issue, I agree. So far, Council has conducted 10,000 visits to businesses in about the last 6 months, working with businesses and community to make sure people are being COVID safe. The enforcement piece doesn't sit with Council at the moment. So the enforcement for public, obviously, is with Victoria Police, but for businesses and the like, it sits with the Department of Justice and also the Department of Health. So we're working really closely with them. We have a number of initiatives planned over the next few weeks that I can't go into detail now about, to go into some of the areas, maybe including the one that you've mentioned, to really step up that education and enforcement, because it is at that point that it needs it. It's so important people are using QR codes and wearing masks and things, and we are seeing some areas of the municipality where that compliance isn't as good as it should be. So we're doing everything we can in that space, and certainly advocating very hard to the state government for more support in that area as well. Opened a new playground that had a seniors section in the playground, and the feedback has just been incredible on that. People have really enjoyed it, and obviously once lockdown is over, people will be able to get out and about more and use those. But it's certainly the plan to do that. There's some analysis to be done about where the best place to put those are so that they're accessible to seniors, but that is definitely planned. Any possibility of COVID relief for people hoping to build in the area, but plans impacted by the lockdown around rates? So I think this is around rates in particular. So for people that are existing rate payers, of course, and anyone that joins us as new residents, Council have recently signed off and implemented a new hardship policy, and it's a very different approach to Council. So this is not about big stick. This is about helping our community that are struggling through paying rates. So lots of different options to work with community members around payment plans, deferred payments, all sorts of things, but also supporting you with financial advice around some of those things. So we're ramping that up at the moment. It's going to take us a little while to roll that out, but I'm really confident that will make a difference. And certainly I think we've gone further than other councils that we can find in the state. Lydia, is that something you wanted to mention?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Craig. I just wanted to say that we, at a council level, strongly endorsed and adopted the new financial hardship policy, and it is really best practice. We looked at, our council officers looked at many other policies, and we are looking to appoint a dedicated financial hardship officer as a council employee. And what that will mean is, instead of the issue being referred straight to debt collectors, we will have the expertise in-house to be working with residents in a more sensitive way, and developing the expertise in that area. So we're really thrilled with the new financial hardship policy, and it broadens out the definition of the financial from not just rates, but other council fees and charges.
Thanks, Lydia. All right, we've got 11 to go, so I'm going to make sure we get through all of these 11 before we wrap up. Mernda and Willert seem to be getting a lot of new infrastructure at the cost of Layla and Thomastown. Why don't we get a community centre too? So, look, it does appear that way. I know people think that. Part of the reality of some of these, in the areas where there's a lot of new developments, it's part of the requirement on developers to either fund or actually build these facilities as part of getting permission to build the new infrastructure and the new housing in the first place. But we're focusing on the whole municipality and filling in those gaps. We often hear similar comments, I think it's fair to say, from Whittlesea Township as well. So this plan is about that equity across the board. Some areas have got the infrastructure there, but it needs refreshing, expanding, modernising, and that's a key part of that 10-year financial plan as well, that we upgrade the facilities. So I can't give you an answer right now about a Layla or Thomastown additional community centre, but that's something I'm happy to cycle back round on. But there are lots of plans for more community centres and more multi-function centres too, which would be more accessible to broader range of people in the community as well. The current staff running the council are brilliant. You keep us informed of what's going on and value our views and suggestions, which we never experienced to this extent before. Thank you. Oh, thank you. And I'll certainly
Great
pass that on to
feedback.
the staff. Yeah, thank you. What specifically in the budget for 30 to 60-year-old singles? I think I've covered that one. You haven't covered the question. That's the same question again. Yeah, I've covered that one. Some obviously got a key issue is in that middle age group there, and I think I've covered it as much as I can, but we will make sure that when we're going through the draft of the plan and when council reconsiders it, that we have really been fair and equitable across the board. So we certainly take your point on board. In the 2016 census, nearly 30% of people in Thomastown and Laylaw didn't access the internet at home for a variety of reasons, including NBN. How are they being consulted in these final stages? Yeah, look, it's a tricky one. Obviously, restrictions are making this challenging. We're doing the best we can, and we're using the online forums. Before we had the online forums planned, we were planning pop-ups and other things. It's a problem. That gap of 30% of people not accessing the NBN or internet in that area has dropped significantly. We are aware of some data from NBN that highlights that. So hopefully now more people are able to access that. But it's just a reality of the times. Fortunately for us, I think in the development of the initial draft plan, we were able to get out and meet community groups, hold pop-ups in shopping centres, and Lydia and other administrators attended those as well. So we had really good input from a whole range of people at that point. And we've also sought inputs from a range of community groups, the disability network, the reconciliation groups, and our partners right across health as well, because this new community plan includes the health and wellbeing plan too. So all the health industries, mental health sector were all consulted as well. But I think it is a limitation, a genuine limitation of the current COVID situation. Are you open to creating community food gardens? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Certainly when previously I worked in Bendigo, and that was a real key theme up there. We do have some community gardens, allotments and things. There's one obviously in Laylaw. I'm aware of the one that has the tram. But I think it's definitely an area that we need to explore. We have a renewed focus in our environment team and new leadership in that area, and it's certainly something that I'm keen to explore, because not only are they great ways to grow food and be healthy, but they're a great way of communities coming together too. So absolutely something that we'll consider. Litter enforcement team appears planned for 2023-24, and the rubbish issue is here and now. Bring forward. So litter enforcement isn't planned in that year. There's peaks in the costs, as you will see in that 10-year plan, around waste generally, and that relates largely to the procurement of significant assets. So, for example, the rolling out of the fourth bin, the glass bin, which is being mandated by the state government. We've got to buy 80,000 of those bins. So there are in initial costs. We already have a very large team of litter enforcement staff and litter collection staff, probably more than any council I've come across. But we're looking at how we can make that more efficient. And we're certainly very much aware of the issue of illegal dumping. And we're also looking at how we can make our hard waste collection system far more efficient as well, and hopefully be able to collect a lot more items from the roadside than we currently can. And we've had a series of internal workshops with our staff and experts in that field over the last few weeks to work through that issue as well.
Craig, could I just, quickly comment that the EPA have also changed some of their regulations, and we just signed off on a report at the last council meeting whereby council officers have got additional delegations for proactive management of pollution, litter and so forth, and that has been transferred from the EPA for that proactive work.
Yeah, that's right, Lydia. And we also have an EPA officer that's seconded to council as well. So they're still employed by the EPA, but they work directly with our staff on that waste and litter enforcement. A comment there about not putting bins in parks. It's not safe. Not sure about that one. We'll have a look at that as we work through the detail of the planning. A few abandoned houses in the area, how difficult to remove them? It's actually incredibly incredibly difficult. We have recently, probably in the last 3 or 4 months, really ramped up our efforts on what we call unsightly properties. So an abandoned house on its own isn't necessarily an issue, but certainly where it becomes unsightly, you know, windows broken, overgrown, full of rubbish, we're taking a lower level of tolerance with those and dealing with those. And I was only briefed today actually on one that we're taking some action that's on a property that's been warned many times, and it's having a really negative impact on their neighbours. So we're stepping up our support and enforcement of those as well. Down to the last two, are there any plans to develop East Willert compared to West Willert, where infrastructure is much more developed? Yeah, look, I believe there is. I think for me, it's a timing issue. As the developments move through those areas, the infrastructure is planned, but it's timing. If you want very specific details on what that planning looks like, just get in touch with us directly and ask to talk to our planning team. And I know that they'll be happy to talk you through what is planned there and what those infrastructure plans are. And one last one, are there any future plans for a Whittlesea City band? Other councils have this and use them at citizenship ceremonies. Not that I've heard of, but I love the idea. There's certainly
maybe you could head it up, Craig.
I don't know about that. There's some other musicians on this as well that I know of, but I think it's a nice idea. It's certainly something we can look at as part of that arts and culture plan and strategy. We certainly have a number of really active choirs and other music-based groups within the municipality too. So why not? It's something we can certainly explore as part of that arts package. So that brings us to the end of the questions. I'm just going to drop that slide down, and at that point, Lydia, I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you, Craig. Look, just in concluding, can I make a few comments? And firstly, that it's just been an absolute privilege being here this evening and hearing firsthand all the comments that have come in. I think it's beautiful to see the use of Menti and the way that platform has been used. And as Craig and Frank had indicated earlier, we've captured all of the data that's come out of tonight. We thought, and you would have seen from the earlier slide that Frank showed that there'd been enormous community consultation in different ways in the development of the draft, but tonight was really about checking in. Have we got it right? Are there any areas that we needed to modify? And I think the answer is that there are some areas that we need to now go back and relook at. Please be assured that all of the administrators, and we're all in attendance this evening, will be getting the summary of the feedback from tonight. We'll also be getting the revised draft community plan, and then we will need to go through the endorsement process formally at the council meeting. So it's just been a great privilege, as I said, to listen to all of your comments. And I wonder, Craig, just for a minute, whether I could hand over to my colleagues, Peter and Chris, to see if they had any comments, because I appear to have dominated in terms of the administrators, and I just wondered if Peter and Chris wanted to make any final comments.
Thank you, Lydia. Just to continue with what you've said, I think tonight's been really interesting as an administrator to hear the views, and I think that Menti program just works fantastically. But I just want to thank everyone that made the effort to and gave the time tonight to come on and ask us questions. I really appreciate it, because it's very good to hear from you about your city. So thank you so much for dedicating the time and being online again, because some of us might be online all day and I know it gets a bit tiring, but thank you so much. It's been fantastic, and stay safe.
Thank you, Peter. And over to Chris.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure that I can add much more to what you and Peter have said. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the technology, despite a couple of glitches tonight, worked really well. I was really impressed by the thoughtfulness of the input and what that says to me. People have actually engaged with the plan, with the document. A little bit more on the financial plan would be good to hear people's thoughts before we wrap this up. And I understand that's not as easy to engage with, but just to repeat what Lydia and Peter have said, we genuinely want to receive this input. The concept of deliberative engagement and meaningful engagement is more than just a term. We need to make sure that when we finally adopt these very important documents that set the tone for the future, that we know that the community is on board with that. So please take the opportunity to follow up with your thoughts and suggestions, and we look forward to reading it.
Thank you, Chris. So just two final comments. Thank you again. It's been a really wonderful session this evening, and we really appreciate your input, and hopefully you'll see some of the changes in the final community plan when it's adopted. And secondly, there are a few comments this evening about our council officers. I just want to formally again acknowledge our staff, from our Chief Executive Officer and a number of the officers that are in attendance today, but the multiplicity of wonderful staff at the City of Whittlesea. I just want to acknowledge their enormous efforts, not just in relation to tonight, but all of the wonderful work that is occurring across the organisation. So thank you again. And on that note, we will close this session.